It remains unclear exactly what caused the global IT outage that grounded thousands of flights and impacted several industries, including banking and healthcare services. Well, for more on this and the magnitude of the outage, I'm joined by Sibusiso Sishi, offensive cybersecurity specialist. Sibusiso, appreciate your time today, and hopefully we don't get hacked out of this conversation. But walk us through, what were those challenges yesterday?
So basically what happened was that around 6 a.m. South African time, a third-party vendor called CrowdStrike, they are a endpoint detection and response tool, sort of like in a better term, an antivirus tool. They released a faulty update that basically crashed the Windows operating system. So if your machine had this CrowdStrike endpoint agent installed, and they received the update, it made the Windows system be unresponsive and then show the blue screen. So you would have noticed that if you're on social media, you would have seen a lot of people showing screens of like blue screens on their Windows devices. So it's basically caused by this third-party antivirus tool.
Now, when we look at the magnitude of the impact of this faulty update, two questions come to mind. And the first question is, how does someone or any organization release a faulty update, particularly when it has this global implication? And two, is there any accountability that would stem from this?
So it's very hard because the way CrowdStrike have released what happened is that it just feels like, unfortunately, this faulty update got released into the wrong channel, and that got pushed out onto the machines. And these things do happen from time to time. Even Microsoft have released faulty updates. It's just one of those absolute accidents that just happen. And yeah, it's just, unfortunately, these things just do happen to organizations.
So globally, when we talk about that impact, does this, when you have these failures in global systems, does it allow potential threats to manifest? I mean, do hackers have a field day when such systems don't work?
Yes and no. It just depends on which systems are being affected. And over here is the machines that are being affected, or the same machines that hackers would have wanted to gain access to. So they would have been offline. So there was sort of like a joke and a meme going around where they were saying like the advanced persistent threat actors on the internet were also having a day off because they couldn't hack into the systems because they were all down as well. So this incident, it's extremely bad because it really brought down a lot of machines, and they are really calling it one of the biggest sort of like cybersecurity incidences in recent times. So hackers, or even the threat actors or the malicious hackers, would not have had a field day yesterday at all.
So what do we read into the systems on the continent versus the rest of the world? Because the impact globally, I mean, if you look at the United States, for instance, or other international airports that were impacted, the impact was huge. It was marginally smaller coming to a country such as South Africa.
So there were some South African companies that were affected. More specifically, there was a bank that released released a status update yesterday saying that one of their third-party vendors released a faulty patch. So in South Africa, there were some banks that were affected. But overall in South Africa, really, it has been much less, or South African firms were affected. They weren't really talking about it compared to the rest of the world. Most of the people that I've seen who were mostly affected was Australia and New Zealand, and obviously in the US as well, when things started to wake up that side in the US. But in South Africa and Africa, there really hasn't been much. There were some bit of chatter, but the biggest one was just the bank that released a statement yesterday.
So can South African companies or companies elsewhere on the planet do anything to safeguard themselves against future events of a similar nature?
So the best way to sort of add the defensive in depth is when a third-party vendor, like even Microsoft, for example, they release patches to systems, is to have a bit of a delay. I know one organization that has a month-long delay for their antivirus tools. So not on the updates, but actually updating the tool itself, because they want to be able to test it first before they release it to all their systems, before they apply to all their systems. So I would recommend that organizations have to not also apply the tool, to not also apply the patches that the vendors are pushing out, but to have like a test network or test system that they could apply the patch to, do some more testing with all their tools that they normally would use within the organizations, and then maybe a week later deploy the tool, deploy the updates to the machines. But then it also works out, the con of that is that if the vendor is releasing a critical patch, for example, a remote code execution where a person could hack into your systems, then you sort of like you're giving the hackers that week, to potentially play around with your network. So it's a bit of both. So I would recommend that, that they play it by, patch by patch. But then I would say about a week delay or a couple of days delay is more than enough to understand what this patch is going to do for your systems before applying it to your whole network.
So finally, how can cybersecurity firms, such as your firm, better support organizations in preventing and managing such outages?
So my firm, we're more of a consulting side. So we do more offensive security. So on our side of the advisory side of things, so we would advise you on things like, like making sure that how's your processes, how you're patching the systems, what are you doing to ensure that all your systems are fully patched in a reasonable space of time, and then also testing your security, your defensive in depth. Because, for example, this CrowdStrike issue, what happened was that if you got hit, and all your systems are down, that could mean a lot of money that's not coming into the business. You need to understand all those situations and all those sort of like test cases, as I would call them, test cases, as to things that could potentially happen within your organization, and be aware of them and be able to understand, be able to recover from them. So that's how we can assist you in that.